So this interview features Nikki Stone, Olympic champion 1998. Something went wrong, I don't know what. During the interview I could see Nikki, however now in the video she's not visible. However, it's a very interesting interview. Nikki was told 18 months before the Olympics that she will never ever be able to do any sport again. She overcame the odds. Listen in how it was. Also, she told her parents at the age of 5 that she wanted to become Olympic champion. So, really interesting stories, very inspirational. Have a look, listen in. Today I'm joined by Nikki Stone. Nikki is Olympic champion 1998 in aerials, which is a discipline of freestyle skiing. Further achievements include world champion in 1995, overall World Cup winner in 1998, 11 World Cup wins, and 35 World Cup podiums. After her career, Nikki went on to study psychology and became an author and motivational speaker. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Nikki, if you would have to describe in a few words what your sport is, what would it be?
Only a few words, huh? I would say it's the combination of skiing and gymnastics. If I had a few more words to explain it, I'd say we ski into a jump at about 45 to 55 kilometers per hour. And we go into a ski wall that launches us 50 feet in the air. The jump is about 10 to 12 feet tall. And it launches us 50 feet in the air. We flip and twist through the air, and we land on a 45-degree steep hill, and we hopefully ski away.
We'll link up that video of your Olympic jump. That is really awesome. When my son saw it, he said he wants to try it.
We'll take him on.
I guess you'll need some preparation for that.
Yes, most definitely.
Nikki, in your life as an athlete, what was your darkest moment?
Oh, my darkest moment as an athlete?
Yep.
Okay, as an athlete, I actually had a spinal injury. And at the time, I thought it was a muscle spasm. And I thought I could push through it in the contest because I was ranked second in the world. And of course, I wanted to be first. And so I competed at this contest thinking that I was going to be able to pull ahead of the Canadian girl, Veronica Brenna, who was in first. And my back was getting progressively worse throughout the season. And I found that it felt like I had stabbing pains in my back. And I landed my first practice jump, got to the bottom of the hill, and my physical therapist came over to me because I was lying on the bottom of the hill. And he said, you know, what's going on? What's wrong? And I said, this muscle spasm's back. And about 30 minutes went by. And he said, there's 5 minutes left of training. What do you want to do? And I said, I wanted to jump. And so he had to lift me onto my feet. Since I couldn't stand up on my own, my back was in such pain. And I went back to the top of the hill, and this time with tears streaming down my face, I went and took another jump. And this time it felt like I had 10 knives stabbing me in my lower back. And it's a type of pain that would normally drop someone to their knees. And I was 50 feet in the air upside down. And I don't know how. I think your body goes into autopilot when your life's in jeopardy. And I managed to get around to my feet, but I collapsed right on impact and slid to the bottom of the hill. And found that I couldn't move more than 2 inches in any direction. And what I found was the injury was not a muscle spasm, but it was something called internal disc disruption. And they said to imagine taking an egg and shaking up that egg, and the inside of it is scrambled, but the outside of it stays intact and actually has cracks in it and leaks. And it's leaking fluids that are impinging on the rest of my back. And I went and saw doctor upon doctor upon doctor. And every doctor told me that I was going to have to face that I'd never be going back to aerial skiing again. And it was devastating. So I tried every exercise and procedure possible and really started to fall into a deep depression and really wondered if I'd ever come back to the sport that I dreamt of winning a gold medal in for so long.
And from my research, there was 18 months before the Olympics. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It was right before the Olympics, and it was a lot of work in order to come back to win that medal. And I finally did find a doctor who did believe in me. And he said it was going to take a lot of work. It was going to take a big risk, and it was going to be incredibly painful, because what he had me do was lift heavy weights to build up the muscles in my back to support those injured discs. But in the process, I could blow out those discs completely. And so I really had to make sure that I was strong in order to come back from this injury, and build up my back, build up the muscles to support. I couldn't have surgery because they said if I fused two different discs, because it was two discs in my back that had these difficulties, these injuries. And so I couldn't have surgery. I really just had to be able to build myself up in order to come back. And probably about 1 year before the games, I started jumping again, and realized how important it was for me to have that self-confidence and to be able to learn how to overcome some of these adversities, because no matter what sport you're in, no matter what field you're in, you're going to have adversities and obstacles you're going to be challenged by.
Yeah. And I can imagine, I mean, if so many people tell you it's not possible, doubts are creeping in your head in the rehab process. How did you stay on track mentally?
Yeah, it was really a challenging time. As I said, I went through a depression, and it was something that I went and saw a sports psychologist, because it was so challenging for me, because I dreamt of winning a gold medal since I was 5 years old. At 5 years old, I made my own podium out of tables and chairs, and stood on top and told my parents that I was going to win the Olympics someday, and that was my podium. And so to have that dashed away from me at 25 years old, it was really excruciating. And so for me, it was learning and understanding that there's always a way around, but we have to make sure that we're focused on that end goal. It's so easy to start in that downward spiral when you start thinking negatively. And so I had to make sure that I was thinking about the positive outcomes, thinking of the steps that I was making, because it's so easy to think, you're not getting anywhere. But for me, I started walking again, and then I started being able to ski again, and then I started jumping again. And each of these steps, I took that as great confidence to build myself up. And I also realized, how important it was to have that positive thinking, because it really helps put your whole body and your mind in the right frame of mind. For me, I actually didn't just get a degree in psychology. I got one in sports psychology. And a lot of it was due to that sports psychologist that I worked with, and how powerful it was for me to know that you can control your mind to be able to come back, to build yourself up, even if it was physical injury.
Yeah, I think it's a really amazing story.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And then, what was your best moment?
My best moment was winning the gold medal. At the Olympics, it was terrifying. There are 40,000 people at the bottom of the hill. Anything can go wrong in the day of the Olympics. And believe it or not, I was praying for bad weather. A lot of people want a sunny day, but I know there are other competitors that kind of fall apart when the weather's bad, or the conditions are bad, or anything's going wrong. And for me, I learned how to take those challenges and work with them. And the way I did that is try to imagine every day was the Olympics. So if leading into the contest, if the weather was bad, I'd still do the jumps that I was going to do. Or if my ski boots didn't arrive because the bags didn't get there from the airport, I took another pair and I still went with the jumps that I was going to do at the Olympics. And every day I'd imagine, this is the Olympics. What would you do in this condition? I'm sick. I'm still going to jump, because that could be what happens at the Olympics. And so I was prepared for any eventuality. Where a lot of the other competitors said, you know what, we're going to hold off our jumps. We're going to hold off these bigger things until we get to the games. And at that point, you haven't practiced them. You haven't practiced for the things that could go wrong. You haven't practiced for all the environmental elements. And it really helped me prepare when I got to the games. And when I started jumping at the games, it was, I was nervous, but I also knew that everything was I always say you have the hay in the barn. If you've actually stocked up like a farmer does and put the hay in ahead of time, you're ready for any eventuality. And for me, I had done the hard work. I had prepared for everything. And so all I could do is go out and try my best at that point. And, the weather was terrible. We had winds that were gusting up to 50 miles an hour. And as an aerial skier, when you're 50 feet in the air, that's the last thing you want to be thinking about. Before my jump, I had to wait a full 3 minutes for the wind to calm down. And I had to be ready to go on that second's notice. When they said judges are ready, I had to go because I knew that lull of wind may pick up again. And so to be able to overcome all these adversities and hurdles and to be able to stand there and do the best jumps I'd ever done at the Olympic Games, and to be able to stand there, listen to my country's anthem play, to be able to watch my flag go up, and to know that I had represented my team, my family, my home country, all meant so much in that moment. And it really brought everything full circle for me.
Oh, nice. What did you learn from that moment?
I think the biggest lesson I learned was about teamwork. And it's kind of funny coming from someone in an individual sport. I was someone who did aerials where you'd get your own score, you'd get your own results. I was the one who'd stand on the podium. But I think it was when the flag was raising and I started thinking about all the support I had around me and how listening to the anthem play, it didn't just represent me, it represented my country. And I realized, how many doctors I needed, how many coaches I needed, how I needed my family, how I needed my teachers and mentors and physical therapists, chiropractors. All these people helped get me to this point. And it was really valuable for me to have that understanding so that I was able to give back at the Olympics. And now working as a motivational speaker, it's great to have your own victories, but to be able to turn around and share and change something in someone else's life is that much more powerful.
Oh, pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time 10, 15, 20 years, what advice would you give your younger you?
Don't sweat the small stuff. There's always going to be ways of turning things around. And I remember when I was a kid and I would have bad contests. As I was leading into the Olympics, I wouldn't make the national team. I wouldn't have my best results at nationals. I wouldn't have a good contest. And I remember my parents saying, either you have a good result or you have a learning experience. And I said, I'm sick of having these learning experiences. And I would just tell myself that these learning experiences really do happen and they really do benefit you. And I have children myself now. And it's a hard thing to understand, but really you learn more on the bad days than you learn on the good days. And so it's important to make sure that when you're doing the video review from your bad contest day, you really have to focus on the things that went wrong and know that they're not failures. They're just another step in learning what the right process is to make sure that you have those victories.
Interesting. Cool. I've taken a note here, and you mentioned this before. You told your parents when you were 5 years old that you want to become Olympic champion.
Yeah.
Was that kind of a childish thing, so to say, or did you really believe in that?
When you're 5, I think you have these great aspirations and these great goals, and we lose that as we get older. You really think that anything's possible at that age. And the greatest gift I could have been given is that my parents never laughed at me. They never told me it wasn't possible. They let me believe that this was something that I could do. But I had to have the right tools in order to make it happen. And for me, at that moment, they sat me down and they told me about a philosophy called the turtle effect. And it's something that carried through with me till this day. And they said, in order to be successful, you have to be like a turtle. You have to be soft on the inside. You have to have a hard shell, and you have to be willing to stick your neck out. And it's something throughout my career that I used in order to come back from injuries, to have that hard shell, to stick my neck out, to try harder jumps, to have that soft inside for the passion for the things that I was doing. And really that set the stage for everything that I would go on to accomplish in the sport. And if I didn't have that moment where they let me believe that that was something I could achieve, I think I may have given up fairly quickly. But it was something that I always felt was within my grasp because my parents let me know that you could achieve anything you want if you set your mind to it.
Cool. What are the habits that make you a successful person or athlete?
Uh, a lot of things that I learned through sports psychology and through my experiences was that we had to make sure that we had focus for what we were doing. I'd say at my first games, I had no focus. I was thinking about being on the late night talk shows. I was thinking the parades for me then when I'd get home, and I was thinking about the medal that I would win when I wasn't even in finals. And so it was so important for me to understand that I couldn't be thinking about the applause and praise. I had to think about the certain steps and elements that would help me win that Olympic medal. And so having that focus and that understanding and learning to block out some of the other external factors really helped me become a better athlete. I also learned as to overcome adversities, not only with what I did with my back injury, but also having to overcome different challenges that we would have at contests, different challenges that we would have with teammates and friends, and doing more difficult jumps. There's always challenges that you're going to encounter. And I really had to make sure I had the understanding that you could always put yourself back on course and back on path. I have a friend who is a pilot, and he shared with me that a pilot is off course 90% of the time when they're traveling overseas. And the reason they get there is they're constantly making corrections. And I understood this in my life as well. And we constantly have to make the corrections. Life is evolving. It's changing all the time. Our bodies are changing. Our minds are changing. The environment is changing. And you can either choose to be pulled down by that, or you can choose to find another path to get you there and make those corrections to put yourself back on course. And it was really helpful for me in overcoming my injury, and also encountering and dealing with all these other adversities that I had was challenged with. I also learned how to take big risks. Believe it or not, I am afraid of heights. And going 50 feet in the air, you would think it would be something that someone who's afraid of heights, there's no way they would do it. And for me, I really had to focus on the things that I did know how to do. I had to focus on my strengths, that I was a good jumper, that I could go off, and I had a very strong takeoff on my jump, that I was good at my landings. And it kind of gave me the confidence that I needed in order to try these more difficult jumps. It gave me the confidence to know that I could go out there and accomplish anything, just by telling myself that you focus on the elements that you do have control over. And by doing that, it allowed me to try some more difficult jumps, to push myself. And I realized how exhilarating it was when we actually took those risks.
Okay. And you mentioned about staying on course or course correcting.
Right.
How did you determine whether you were on course or whether you were a little bit off course and you needed to course correct?
It's often easy to see by the results you get if you're off course, but we're also pulled into the fact that this is someone else's opinion oftentimes. And it really comes from an internal, a will of yourself, about what you can accomplish. And it was something that I realized that I couldn't ever be satisfied with my results. If I was always satisfied on yesterday's victories, that I would never be able to push myself further. And even though I was winning contests a few years before the Olympics, if I stayed with that mindset and I stayed with the results that I had, I would have never pushed myself further to be able to do the jumps that I actually won the Olympics with. And so for me, it was always pushing myself to someone that had greater results, or someone that had accomplished more, whether it be in another sport or someone who accomplished something in another field. Some of the men, I would compare myself to the men that were doing the more difficult jumps. But no matter what it was always trying to push further than I thought was possible, because it's so easy to sit there and be satisfied with what you're doing and feel like you're okay because you got the results in the past. But you constantly have to tell yourself there's more to do. And so in a sense, like the airline pilot, we're always off course, and we're always having to push ourselves, and we're always having to find that way to be able to do more.
Interesting. You have graduated from the university with a summa cum laude.
Yes.
So is that strive for excellence something that you think is innate and made you a successful athlete? Or your career and your hardship as a career made you to strive for being a perfectionist?
That's actually interesting because it's something we study in sports psychology. And I don't know if I have an exact answer yet. I have my theories. And my theory is that we do have something that drives us towards wanting to have success. But it's also the environment that we're put ourselves in. And, it was surrounding myself with parents who let me believe anything was possible. It was surrounding myself with other students and that were successful, other athletes that were successful. And I'm going to draw a blank right now, but there's a great speaker who said you are the result of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And so it's something that I love to be able to surround myself with people that are successful, because it always drives me more and allows me to push myself. So really, I do think that there's something in me, like when I was 3 years old, I had to win the game of putt-putt golf. But it was something that I always pushed further as well. And it was from the surroundings of my family, my friends, my colleagues, my fellow teammates, people that always helped push me to believe I could be more.
Interesting. Do you have a morning routine?
These days, or when I was an athlete?
Maybe both.
As an athlete, yes, I always would get up and I would stretch. I would go through my jumps in my head. I was someone who was a very visual person. I would try to imagine things successfully before I did them. And a lot of that had to do with my spinal injury. I couldn't do as many jumps as I had in the past. And so it was always getting up and visualizing and trying to do as much as I could. I'd go on a light run. I would put myself, have a great breakfast. And for me, it was always trying to put myself in the best place possible so that I could tell myself, you've done everything. All you can do now is try your best. And it would kind of give me a calm. It would give me this feeling of, all right, you go out there and just try now. There's nothing to be nervous about because you've done the hard work. And now it just means going out there and giving it a shot. And I think nowadays I use something similar. It's still getting up, eating the good breakfast, putting myself in the right frame of mind, preparing myself for success throughout the day, and going out there and trying to achieve my best.
How do you do that?
A lot of it's frame of mind. It's something that we all have adversities. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your situation is. It's not an easy situation in any country. And you can choose to be pulled down by the things that are going on around you, or you can choose to either change them or utilize them in your best possible way. And so if you can tell yourself that this is not going to be something that's going to get you down, it won't.
Okay, cool. How do you prepare for important moments?
I prepare for the most important moments by visualizing and trying to imagine everything perfectly, and also by preparing by actually doing these steps. So as I said, as I went into the Olympic Games, I would prepare for anything that could go wrong. If it was bad weather out, I would go out there and try to put myself in a situation where this could be what you had at the Olympics. So the important moments, even to this day, if I have a big speech, and I'm going to be in front of 15,000 people, I try to put myself in a situation where I make myself nervous by going and speaking in front of friends. It's actually more nerve-wracking speaking in front of 10 friends than it is 15,000 people you don't know, because they're going to be critical of you. And so if I could put myself in a situation where I get myself nervous and I'm prepared for those situations, that it's going to be a lot easier when I actually encounter them.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I can't remember which athlete said that, but also one athlete said making practice harder so competition becomes easier.
Yeah, it really does help. And it doesn't just go to jumping like you would at the Olympics, say. It's imagining the crowds at the bottom of the field. It's asking reporters to come out and watch you so that you're used to having the media around. It's having the smells, the sounds, everything that you would encounter on that day. And the more things, the more elements that you can take out that are going to be unknown, the more prepared you're going to be for that situation.
On that day of the Olympic final in 1998, there were difficult weather conditions. You mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you prepare for that? So you mentioned you were praying for bad weather because that would
Yeah.
give you the edge over the competition.
Yeah. I
And
actually,
on top of that, you did a triple somersault, so something no one else has intended to do.
yeah, it was on that day of finals. I did want the bad weather because I knew a lot of the athletes would back down on their degree of difficulty. They wouldn't do as difficult jumps because they hadn't prepared it in the weeks, months prior. And so I also know that when it's a perfect bluebird day, there are a lot more people that land their jumps. And people don't want adversities. They want an easier path. And if you can prepare yourself for the challenges, then you're going to give yourself that edge up when you're encountered by them. And so it really helped me to have practice, to be in the right frame of mind. And it didn't mean I wasn't nervous. When there's winds gusting and you're an aerial skier, it's terrifying. We had to practice our jumps, and my two speed checks where we test our speed to go to do my triple backflip on that day of finals, I was too slow because we want to be on to the kilometer per hour in order to do our jumps. And to do a triple backflip, I wanted to be at 61 kilometers per hour. And I was 57, both the speed checks I took. And my coach said, you're just going to have to be confident. And so there really is still that, really fear factor as you go up there. And I had to take a giant step up and just be confident. And lo and behold, as I went through the speed guns during my contest, I found out after that I was at 65 kilometers per hour, which is 4 kilometers per hour faster than I wanted. And so it's always knowing how to adapt in those situations as well. You're not always going to have everything perfect. You're just going to have your ability to go in there and adapt to whatever is given to you.
And talking about confidence, you mentioned that before as well. You had to wait 3 minutes for that deciding jump. And I looked a couple of times at the video. Your face, you looked so cold-blooded. Were there no doubts in your? I mean, it was just amazing. Were there no doubts in your head or something like that?
I didn't give myself a chance to have the doubts. I didn't think about the results at that point. I was just thinking about my jump. And so I was so focused on doing it perfectly again and again and again and again. And it's, I look back and it was repetitive. There was so much that I did over and over and over and over again. So as I stood there, I blocked out the 40,000 people at the bottom of the hill, blocked out the fact that I was too slow on those last 2 speed checks, blocked out the flag sitting sideways because the winds were so strong, blocked out the camera that was 6 inches from my face, and just thought about my jumps again and again and again. And then finally, my coach gave me the clear sign. And 3 minutes may not seem that long if you're hitting the snooze alarm or getting a massage, but when you're waiting to see if your life's going to change or not, it feels like an eternity. And so all I did was go over my jumps again and again and thought of them perfectly. And so there was never that chance to say, well, can I land this or what's going to happen because of these situations or circumstances? It was always just thinking, this is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to accomplish this goal.
Really interesting. How do you overcome setbacks?
It's not easy. I'm human like everyone else. And I handle challenges just like everyone else. We all go through a point where we feel defeated. We feel like we want to give up. But it's in those moments that you have to push further. I was a gymnast growing up, and I often, I had a, are you still there? Okay, sorry. My phone was going out on me. So when I was growing up, I had a coach in gymnastics that would tell me that when we were going through conditioning, we would do these really heavy, hard drills for conditioning. And we would have to, do toe raises, and we'd have to do so many sit-ups and push-ups. And it was 45 minutes of grueling exercise. And I remember feeling like so defeated at one point. And he said, this is the time that you actually have to dig in, because this is the time you build your muscles. This is the time that you build that success, and the times that you feel the worst. And I always remembered that. And so when we're at that point where we feel like breaking, those are the points where it really means so much. And as I said, you really, on the most, the days that are the worst, those are the days that are most successful for you, because you've learned the most. And so we need those challenges. So challenges are what help us make us grow. They're what make us become better people. It's what help us become better athletes. And so it was always taking those hurdles and realizing this is something that's actually going to be valuable for me in the long run, but I have to grit my teeth and get through it.
Embrace the challenge.
Right.
Who's your role model and why?
My role model was both my grandmother and both my parents. Both my parents have overcome cancer. They are the ones who taught me about the turtle effect, and they've always believed that you can accomplish what you want as long as you work hard. And my grandmother was this just amazing lady that got 2 doctorates. She was a principal in New York City. She accomplished a lot of things that a lot of people didn't think women could do at the time. And it was this great role model to be able to go out there and achieve whatever I wanted to, because she set the ground for me to be able to go out there and have that success as well. And she told me a quote that I always remember. And when I would go through challenging times, she told me the quote that the brave do not live forever, but the cautious do not live at all. And I realized in order to accomplish great things, I had to put myself in that chance to achieve them. You know, if you give up ahead of time, you've already failed. So I might as well give myself that shot to be able to shine. And so, you know, both my parents and my grandmother really set the stage for me to have this success. It was just up to me to be able to push that last little mile in order to get there.
You think you could have done it without the role model of your grandmother?
No, I don't. I don't. I don't. I think if any one person wasn't there along the way, it would have been a lot more challenging. You know, you don't win a gold medal. Gold medal comes down to milliseconds and half of points, and you know, the smallest little margin. And so if I didn't have every one of the people that was supporting me along the way, I really think it would be so much more challenging to have those successes. And it was not only having that support, but recognizing that I needed it, because it's often the case where someone is successful, they don't realize that it takes a team, it takes a whole support system, and you don't just need that support system. You have to recognize that you need their support along the way as well.
Okay. What is the best advice you received and who gave it to you?
The best advice, I think, was from my parents. And it was something that I still share with my kids today, is that it's okay to have failures, but it's not okay to not try. And so as long as you're going out there and giving it your best, you already have success. And so, you know, my kids, I don't care if they win a contest. I don't care if they win a game. As long as they're putting their best foot forward and trying, it's all I care about. And by doing that, in the end, you will see the results.
Nice. How did a typical training day look like back in the days?
Typical training day, we would wake up early in the morning. We would go out and do water ramping. We'd jump off plastic ramps into a pool as our summer training. We'd go and lift weights in the afternoon. We would go for runs. We would do video review. It was a full-time job that you were getting up, you know, from 7 in the morning till 8 or 9 at night as an athlete. You know, that was my job. And it was something that I took seriously. And I knew that there's no part of it that I could slack at if I wanted to be the best.
Interesting. You were facing back problems during your career. We talked about that. And a lot of these came from landings, right? Your sport has high impact forces. So out of personal interest, how do you distribute these landings and high impact throughout the week?
Well, for me, it was a lot of the way I jumped. You know, my trajectory is a lot of people would go out longer and they would land with the hill. And for me, I would go up and down a lot more, which meant that I got a lot of great height, but at the same time, it would be great impact coming down. And I don't know if I would have changed that, because it certainly helped me land the jumps, but I would have prepared myself more by building my back up, making sure that my back was stronger before I actually took these jumps, because I don't think I did enough with my back to make sure that my back and core were strong enough to be able to withstand, you know, all those landings over time.
Okay, cool. Do you want to nominate someone to be interviewed?
I would love to nominate, I would love to nominate Chris Waddell. He is a Paralympian skier and also wheelchair racing athlete. He was both in the summer and winter Olympics. He's won medals in both. And he's actually the first wheelchair athlete to climb Everest. And excuse me, not Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro. He climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in his chair. And so he's not only a phenomenal athlete, but a phenomenal person as well. And I think your listeners would love to hear from him as well.
Interesting. Before we wrap up, you've written a book. I think you brought a copy of your book, When
Yeah.
Turtles Fly, right?
When Turtles Fly, and it's the secrets of successful people who know how to stick their necks out.
Yeah.
And it was 40 different contributors from all different fields. People like Tommy Hilfiger, Shaun White, Lindsey Vonn, Dr. Stephen Covey, Lester Holt, all different people from all different fields sharing their stories of success and using my family's turtle effect to talk about why they were successful. And it was interesting to hear their perspective of why they had that success. And one thing that I found interesting throughout the process is that I asked all these athletes, all these businessmen, businesswomen, musicians, bakers, whatever their field was, I would ask them, why were you successful? And it was always the athletes who knew right away why they're successful. And I think a lot of it's because they have coaching their whole life. They're constantly looking at their successes. They're constantly looking at the areas they can improve on, and they know why they're successful. And so it was, a lot of them told me it was a great lesson. I had a military hero that told me it was so good for him to look back and to have that understanding of why he was successful. And throughout the book, it shares their stories and mine intertwined throughout, giving lessons and tools of how others can go and find success as well.
Cool. And so the turtle effect is you need to have a hard shell, you need to be soft in the inside, and you
Correct.
have to stick your neck out.
Yes, those are the three elements that always helped me. And you don't think of a turtle as someone finding you success, but it really did help me have that understanding and to put a visual to what I needed to do in order to find my accomplishments.
And the hard shell is you need to be resistant to...
You need to overcome adversities. There's going to be a lot of adversities and challenges. And it also was finding the focus to make sure that you're putting yourself in that situation with the hard shell. So that you can overcome the adversities and you can be prepared for any elements that are thrown at you.
And the soft from the inside is the character?
The soft inside is the character, the passion you have to make sure you have the love for what you're doing, because really that is something that drives everything else. You're not going to be willing to take the risk. You're not going to be willing to overcome the adversities if you don't have love for what you do. And then lastly, the sticking your neck out is taking the risks and having the confidence to be able to follow through. And also make sure you have the teamwork, the people around you to help you stick your neck out, to put yourself in the best possible situation where you're not always living in a bubble, but you're pushing yourself to something that you maybe didn't think was possible.
Okay. Your experience as an athlete, as well as your study in sport psychology, you have been member of the US Olympic team and have helped athletes to overcome fear and adversity under pressure and build confidence. And currently you are a keynote speaker and motivator. What else is going on in your life?
I'm also my favorite job, which is being a mom. I have two children who are 7 and 10, and it's great taking these lessons and putting them on and sharing them with someone else. I don't think enough credit was given to my parents until I actually had children myself. And it really is to be that support system as well. It's this fine line between being encouraging but not being pushy. And I was so impressed with that, how my parents walked that line and really were always there to support me, to let me know I could achieve anything. But they weren't pushing me. They knew it had to come from me. And to this day, I honestly would not have this Olympic medal if it weren't for that support that they'd always given me.
Nice. And you're also offering people your help in terms of sport psychology. Is everyone eligible to that?
Well, it's something that I've worked with the United States Olympic Committee. They've brought me into some of the processing where you actually get to the games and what you prepare for at the games. I have worked with people to do some personal development coaching as well. But the majority of my time is spent doing the motivational speaking and writing. Okay.
And where can people find you?
They can go to my website, which is www.nikkistone.com, Nikkistone. And all my contact information is on there. They can reach out to me, and they can even purchase the books there if they would like.
Oh, nice.
And 25% of the proceeds go to American Cancer Society. So that's something that's really been important to me as well.
That's good. What social media channels are you using? Where can people follow you?
I do have Twitter and Instagram. It's Nikki Stone Gold. And if people want to check out what I'm doing on there as well, they are welcome to come and take part.
I link all that up. Nikki, thanks so much for your time. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Have
Thanks.
a good night.
You too.
No, not for us. It's night. For you, it's middle of the day.
We'll still have night though.
Thanks so much for your time. I truly
You're
enjoyed
welcome.
it.
Oh, thank you. Well, you've been great, and thanks for the great questions.
Thank you.
All right, Christian, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.